Welcome to this week's episode of Car Stars and Roll Bars. I'm Mike Kinney, your host. Do me a favor, especially our friends on Facebook, make sure to jump over to our YouTube channel, Car Stars and Roll Bars. Like, subscribe, and share. Each week, we give you different perspectives and views on cars, the collectors, the builders, and everything that's cool about cars, because candidly, there's a whole bunch of cool going on. Today, I have personally found this museum myself years ago, and it's outside Grand Junction, Colorado, and we are pleased to have Al Sisson with us. And this is part of the Gateway Canyons collection, if you will, and he runs the air tours. And his other job, he gets to take care of the museum, the auto museum. So people, I says, Mike, what are you talking? What's the Gateway Auto Museum? Thank you for that question. We have Mr. John Hendricks, as in founder of the Discovery Channel. He's going to tell you. Hey, Rick, run the clip.
There is a story to be told about the pioneering spirit of America's automobile. There are tales of innovation, engineering, design, and business success and failure. Telling these stories is the mission of the Gateway Auto Museum. So I was fascinated by cars from an early age, but there was kind of a companion piece to cars, and those were maps. And in those days, the oil companies would commission these wonderful illustrations that really promoted the romance and the adventure of travel. And boy, did they hook me. You know, the old Sinclair oil maps with dinosaurs, and when I was 4 or 5 years old, I thought the dinosaurs lived somewhere out in Utah or Colorado. And so, to me, automobiles, at least at an early age, represented a vehicle for exploration. I really like the spirit of ingenuity that we witnessed in this country with the development of the automobile. For each era, that sculpted steel, it's like what America thought of itself is represented. It's kind of frozen in time in the styling. So for me, this collection, and also for my wife too, represents sculptural art. And the way we've tried to display them here in the museum is to properly light each car, keep them separated so people can walk around at least 3 sides, sometimes 4 sides, to be able to really appreciate the design that went into these vehicles.
Forgive me while I'm drooling. Yeah, just that intro alone, my wife saw it when I was working on a big monitor in my office, and she went, wow. Yeah, this is one of those collections, it just kind of takes your breath away. Al, welcome to the show this morning. We cannot thank you enough for being here. So how you doing remotely from Gateway, Colorado this morning, sir?
We are doing just fine. A little on the cold side, but happy to be here. Thanks for having us on.
Well, it is our pleasure. I also want to thank, I look at my notes. You spent a whole bunch of time in the military. I think you retired as a lieutenant colonel. You did 3 deployments to Iraq, and thank you for your service, and God bless everything you guys did, man.
It is a privilege and honor to serve. Blessed with a very wonderful career.
So we're going to jump into a whole bunch of, we got the video coming up later. We're going to be doing a lot of slides, pictures, and talking about it. So, but as for the viewers, Al, you've got a interesting relationship with Mr. Hendricks, right?
I do. He's my uncle. So there sometimes it's better to be lucky than good. And I have that good fortune of having him babysit my brother and I when we were kids. And then after my mom, his sister passed away, he would take me and my brother, give my dad a break from trying to raise two boys on his own. And we'd go spend some vacation time. And he always had a game plan. Cool. With the Discovery Channel, you know, he's big on education.
Yes.
So he took those opportunities to educate his nephews on a myriad of things. And one of the things that hooked me early was a trip to the Air and Space Museum in D.C. Those kind of adventures were fun. So when retiring from the Marines and this opportunity to come to Gateway, you know, that was a no-brainer.
Yeah, that's kind of like just a duh answer, isn't it, right?
Exactly.
Well, we got a few pictures. So it is located about an hour, what would that be, like southeast of Grand Junction?
Yep, just south.
Okay.
You leave Grand Junction along Highway 141, and that picture right there is the thriving metropolis of Gateway.
And yours truly has driven past that sign, so don't blink as you go through town. But as there's like one little convenience store, you know, everybody's really nice and friendly. So you go a little farther and you pop over this rise and you go, oh, this is a little different. This is getting intriguing. And then you go a little further And when you actually stay at the hotel, this is what I call the ambiance of it, which I think is nothing short of amazing. And then we get to what we want to talk about today. I think we get there. So when I pulled up, just that whole shot, to me, just set the tone for the tour, Al.
Absolutely. This place is, no matter what season it is, it has just an incredible, unique beauty. I think partly it's just because we're based down here at the base of all the canyons that are around us. So we're surrounded by those beautiful red rock canyons, the Wingate layer that's about 270 million years old.
Nice.
It really kind of you feel like you're nestled in the earth for sure.
Yeah, and just the drive going to the museum for the viewers, you end up on that little 2-lane road and lots of curves. You're up against the cliffs. So before you even get there, you kind of get in the mood.
You do. It is a fun drive. Not in the wintertime.
Not in the
It's
wintertime.
a little sketchy in the winter, but it is a fun drive. I used to have a little sports car, and I would drive, and I finally got rid of it because no matter how many times I would tell myself, just take it easy today.
Ain't gonna happen.
That road speaks to you, and it gets fun.
And I think we got some shots in the interior, so we're kind of narrating the tour. So again, as soon as you step in the doors to that left, that's where the welcome center is, and you can buy all your swag. So, and I was kind of stepping through these shots because this whole facility was designed specifically for this approach.
It was.
Okay.
When he was putting this collection together, he didn't want it to be like a large warehouse or a garage. He really wanted it to be like a museum, like an art gallery. So the positioning of the cars and the lighting were all set to where you can go up specifically to one car and walk around almost all sides, certainly, 3 sides of it.
Yep.
Really get that detailed look that you may otherwise only get to, see in a magazine or in a book.
What's great with that shot there, it's like a Hollywood premiere, and so you just happen to have a beautiful car sitting inside it.
It is. So that Hollywood room, we've got the Duesenberg in there,
Yep.
31 Stutz, and a few others. The Auburns, I think, are some of my favorites. Just their huge long hood and some of the earlier supercharged vehicles, just really iconic for that era.
Oh, absolutely. And I love this diner look.
Yeah, that was a nice little feature. There's little corners in the museum that are kind of little timepieces.
Yes.
Some in the muscle car room that is that little diner display. Unfortunately, none of the food's real, so if you eat it, you're eating plastic.
There you
But
go.
we've got others that have a motif of you're in an actual garage. So it's got toolboxes and stuff around.
And again, this shot here, just what the old buildings would be looking like, and they're period correct with a car sitting in front of them.
Yeah, a lot of the decorations around. You see some of the old timey fuel pumps there behind that Fiesta.
Yeah.
And then the huge. I love these signs. The first auction I got to go to, a Barrett Jackson auction, through one of the hundreds of the buildings were just all these gas pumps, old sign,
Yeah.
and it really kind of brings you back into that history and that
Yes,
era,
sir.
in those eras. Oddly enough, in the back there, you see what it basically says "Custom Crazy." We've actually changed up that room now, and that's we call that Mustang Alley. There's, I think, about 4 or 5 Mustangs back in that
cool.
area now. There it
Ooh,
is. That one's got the Mustang Alley.
Yeah. So now, how sexy is this? You got a bunch of the early vets together.
We do. The white there is the 54. It's the first year they came out, and then sitting right next to that, I think, is probably one of my favorite cars, the 58, with that kind of blue and silver look.
Yes.
And then, of course, the very iconic, the 63 split window behind that.
Which, yeah, you know me, Al, I'm a big time Mopar guy, but a split window just takes my breath away to this day.
That was probably my favorite, and I was born in 63 because I kind of gravitated toward that.
Yep.
But when I got out here and saw the 58, I'm like, well, hang on a second.
Yeah.
That's pretty sexy.
That's pretty sexy. So, Rick, go ahead and pull us up together. So, share with us, if you can, just what's some of the comments from the different guests that walk through in the museum? Because this thing's kind of hard to explain in advance. And again, you go through Gateway, Colorado, and say, okay. And so is there a lot of shock and awe by the time they get done seeing you guys, or what?
Certainly there is. I think, one of the most common comments that you hear if you're just kind of walking through the museum and hearing people that are seeing it for the first time, they're getting sparked some memory that they have of either a relative or first boyfriend or girlfriend that had, one of these cars. And it's fun to that's kind of the icebreaker to get them to open up about, what those experiences were like. And the whole reason for the museum was, obviously, he's been a car enthusiast his whole life.
Yeah.
And then once Discovery was really taken off, he had the opportunity to start a collection. And then
Perfect.
he had just bought the ranch here in Gateway.
Yep.
I want to say that was probably the mid-'90s. This area before that was basically ranching community, but also big in support for a lot of the uranium mines that were around these mesas. So that market had just started to kind of wind down. So the emphasis behind the museum and the resort were just to bring back some sort of, opportunities, for employment and just to bring back some livelihood to the area. So that was the emphasis. The collection itself was all about the American, kind of a walk through history of the American car museum.
Yes.
So, growing up as a kid, if someone had said Duesenberg to me, I would have thought that's a foreign car just because of the name. Yeah. So I was, one of those early shocked guys when there's been over 130 something different American automobile manufacturers.
Yes.
And most of them, we have kind of dwindled down to the, 4 or 5 that we know of. But you start to walk around and hear Cord, Duesenberg, Auburn, and you're like, wow, we had no idea.
Yeah.
But then you see the cars, and now that they tell a whole different story about really what was going on in the country at the time.
And that's a great response and great insight. Rick's helping us. We're going to step through some of the pictures. And for the viewers, that's the other thing that struck me, just above and beyond the amazing quality of this collection, the way it's situated, it takes you through time. So, and here's a beautiful example of a Duesenberg.
Yeah, this is a 1930 Model J. Wow. And what I love about not just the Duesenberg, but a lot of the cars of this era, if you backed up another, 30 years prior to this, you were in a horse and buggy. So even in this era, you had a certain manufacturer making the engine, someone else making the chassis, and then you had the cab or the cabins or what they would call the coach made by somebody else.
Yes.
And so, in a Duesenberg or a Stutz, you're going to have, 3 significant different serial numbers. And, those all tell their own story about, where they were made, who those craftsmen were.
Wow. Very, very cool. And again, this early iron, as I like to call it, oh my goodness, man, and with exhaust through the side of the bonnet, oh my god, yeah.
That's the 36 Auburn Super Cabriolet. This is one of my. It's hard to. It's going to get old. I'm going to be saying, oh, that's one of my favorites, like on every car. But the funnest thing that we've been doing is over the last 4 or 5 years, we've been taking one vehicle out at a time, and we've got a phenomenal technician that's just, he's an expert on all of these, even from the 1906 Cadillac up to a 2006 Foose Mustang Stallion.
Yep.
He started as a paint and body guy, but he will do a ton of research, and it's fun because we will go, front end to back end and get everything working, no leaks, fresh fluids. So literally every vehicle in the museum, I think the Duesenberg, once we're done with that, I think there'll be maybe 1 or 2 others that haven't been gone through since they were purchased in either 2005 or 2006. Mm-hmm. That's been a fun process because someone's got to drive it and test it, and I get to do part of that.
So once again, you have the world's worst job. Oh, we have a Woody. Look at this. Wow.
41 Packard. I love this color.
Yes.
The wood paneling on these, it's not, some cheap vinyl add-on. Those are wood doors. And we've got a 47 Town and Country Chrysler Woody sitting right next to it there in the background.
Yeah.
The woodwork is just incredible.
Yes. A true craftsman. And so viewers, hold on. It's only going to get better as we go through these shots. And there's the early vet we talked about.
It is. That was it's a 54, and this is one of the more recent editions. I think he picked this up either in 2012 or 2013.
Oh, okay.
Again, we look at these and they're so iconic of again, certain eras. Post World War II, and now guys are wanting something a little more than the four-door, sedan that
Yes.
was, the big family car.
Yes.
So a little bit of more individuality and people enjoying their successes in life. And GM, was looking at the Corvette, and then of course the other option I'm sure we'll talk about later was the Oldsmobile F88 concept car.
Absolutely. And I love the color of this Buick, by the way. That's just breathtaking.
Well, that color, believe it or not, that is the original paint. This is
Really?
not. This is, what they call in that industry a true barn find. This was a new car in '56, and 2 years later, it got put into storage, and it stayed in storage until 2001.
Oh my
So
goodness.
you can't see it in this photo, but toward the back end. So in storage, they, pulled either a tarp or some early, fabric over top of it, and you can still see some marks where that fabric
in.
sat in contact with the paint. So this is unrestored, just as it
That's
got put
just
in storage in '58.
That's magnetic. Hey, Rick, pull us back up together before we jump to the next car, because I always like to kind of tease my guest with us a little bit. Rick, if you can pull us up together. So I was going to ask you what your favorite car is, but I think that answer is going to be about an hour and a half.
Yeah.
Because I'm keeping track, and I think I'm up to 4, maybe 5 or 6 so far, Al. And we've only had 3 cars to talk about. Let's try it a different way. To date, what's your favorite automotive memory?
I think, as it ties into what we're talking about, and so the first car that Hendricks bought, and I can't believe his parents allowed him to do this, was a '68 Camaro. When I know him and I think about, man, you're getting in so much trouble with that car. But as I think a 7 or 8 year old kid, he came over with this beautiful white '68 Camaro, blue interior, and he wanted to take his nephews for a ride. So we get in, and I can just see my mom shaking her head, like knowing what's going to happen. So he drove very gingerly and fun, but once we got out away from the house, he got on it. But at some point, strapping both of us in, either my brother or I didn't fully close the passenger door. So he goes around a sharp left curve, and that door swung open.
Oh, jeez.
Yeah, the ride was pretty much over at that point. He realized I need to get these kids back to their parents.
Oh my
But that
goodness.
was a fun memory. But it was, as scary as that was as a kid. When I look back on that now, that was part of that moment where you just fall in love with the car and the fun you're going to have in them.
Absolutely. And there's a memory I'd like for you to share with the viewers. And I'll back up. When I went to the museum, and we're going to find a clip of this and share it with our viewers in the next couple of months. You go in this area and you sit down, there's a big screen, you get introduced to the museum. I'm going, okay. And so they fire up this clip, and sitting on the screen is Walter Cronkite, which is amazing. And I think you've got a fascinating story about you and Walter getting to spend some time together in an airplane.
Yeah. So early on, you get used to whenever Uncle John would call and say, hey, what are you doing? Well, whatever it is, I don't care anymore. What do you got? So, because he always had this fun game plan of something. So I was stationed in Cherry Point, flying active duty, flying Harriers. And he got a call on a Tuesday or Wednesday. He says, hey, what are you doing this weekend? I said, well, obviously nothing. What do you got? He says, well, I'm going to send an airplane to pick you up, be in your uniform. I got a fun event to go to. I'm like, you got it. So I get on the airplane and it takes off. I'm the only one on it, and it's I think at the time one of the early Citation jets, operated by NetJets. And we're headed northeast. I assumed we were going to Maryland, where he lived at the time.
Right.
And looking out the window, we're passing that, and we're continuing on. So I go up and ask the captain. I was like, hey, where are we going? He says, well, we got to land in Teterboro and pick up somebody. I'm like, okay, great. Who are we picking up? He's like, Mr. Cronkite. And after the gun look, I'm sure he saw my face. He's like, yep, the Mr. Cronkite. And I was just like, holy cow. So I got to sit in the aircraft for about an hour talking with a guy that we all grew up listening, getting the news from. And it was just a wonderful experience.
And I think Walter was also instrumental in kind of advising and being a mentor to John as he went up to stood up the Discovery Channel, correct?
Absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely. He was one of the early contacts that really kind of helped set the course with
Cool.
how to get that done and a few other good contacts to get that off the ground.
Get that off the ground. Speaking of get off the ground, we got some more cars we got to check out here. I think this is I think it's a Mopar. Is that about a 57?
This is a 57 DeSoto. And this
DeSoto.
is called the Fire Suite.
Wow.
Again, one of those early, car manufacturers that a lot of people just don't know about. The DeSotos now are incredibly huge collectors.
Yes.
This one, and we have a 56 Adventurer DeSoto, basically parked back to back to these. At auction, these things are going to be, $200,000 and up, just because they're so rare and obviously if they're, restored to this condition.
Yes.
But phenomenal cars. Both of them are V8s, just incredible, beautiful cars. Huge fins, like a lot of the vehicles of that era in the 50s.
Yeah. Very, very cool. And here we go. Now we're getting closer to the newer muscle.
You starting to get more excited?
Yes, sir.
This is 67 Yanko Camaro. This is all numbers identified and one of the real deals. Unfortunately, I have not been able to drive this one yet.
What, you can't get the keys away from John, or what's going on here? That's right.
No, it's just when this one came up as the next one out to get gone through, it didn't take much to go through it. This one is just in phenomenal shape, so it was out of and back into the museum before I could get an opportunity to sit in it and take a first spin.
Well, you have to put it on your bucket list, right? So just
Definitely.
the ever-growing one. I think we got a
Yes.
few. We got a few more here. Here we go. Oh,
This
my.
is a great story. So I think the last auction we went to is I want to say 2012 or 13. I can't remember which exactly one, but a Barrett Jackson auction, and up came I want to say almost 200 cars out of Ron Pratt's collection.
Oh, yep.
And this was one of them. So this is a 69 GT500 convertible.
Oh,
This was Carroll Shelby's actual, his daily driver car.
really?
So he signed the dash in this, and this is an incredible piece right here.
Wow. So that's what Carol would kind of zip around town in.
It is. And this stayed in his family for a few years, and then after that went to, I think, one or two other collectors, and now it sits here in Gateway.
So I think it's found a good home forever now.
I hope so.
Here we go. Mopar alert. Mopar alert.
Now you're feeling good, aren't you?
Oh, you got it, buddy.
So in 1970, there was I can't remember the publication that came out, but this was the car on the cover of that publication. This is a number, I want to say either one or two off the assembly line in 1970. So this is a very unique one, the 1970 Hemi Cuda.
Nice. Yeah. And you put Hemi and Cuda in the same sentence, and so my eyes glaze over. I got to get my drool cup because it's going to get really kind of ugly before I get done. Wow. That is beautiful. And then to be able to grab that number one or two off the assembly line, that just makes it that much more rare.
It is.
Wow. And this, I believe Mr. Chip Foose had something to do with this.
Yep, there was a certain number of Mustangs that kind of got the treatment from him, and this was they ended up calling the Foose Stallion Mustangs. Obviously, the wheels were really what he made his name for, but then also all the other little tweaks. I mean, if you look at the grill on that and how low that front air dam is,
Yes.
those are the very iconic Chip Foose touches, and including the paint. This was the first of the Stallions that were made. So this is an 06 Mustang, and this was number one. I'm drawing a blank. I apologize on the number of these that they did.
Wow. One of
the most nervous things that I did was drive this from Gateway to Grand Junction to get the airbag recall, done.
Oh, wow.
So the 2-lane highway that you mentioned is what's called chip seal. So it's the little pebbles. And anytime a vehicle was coming the other way, I was as far to the right of my lane as I could get, just in fear of a rock chip.
Oh, yeah. Wow. But, to drive that to Grand Junction, that'd be kind of cool. And I think they still got the Goat's Head Tavern there, if I remember, it's downtown. So go in there for a quick sandwich and then be able to drive her back home.
I don't do that with this collection.
That's a good point.
I value my job, and that's a phone call I would never want to make.
Never, hey, uncle, I was minding my own business. Yeah, and then it kind of goes downhill. And what's great when you're talking about the Chip Foose and his work, and you hit on it, his designs are so subtle. And so you then the more you look at, that changed a little bit. But when Chip gets done with it, it just comes out amazing.
It does. Truly one of those, like some interior decorator can walk into a space and come up with colors and stuff that are going to work, where the rest of us look at those and go, I don't see it.
Yeah.
He has got such an incredible
talent. Yeah. He's got the eye. Okay, for the viewers, so prepare yourself. This is one of one. It's called a concept vehicle, if you will, and we're going to talk about it. But before we're going to talk about it, hey, Al, how about we show it to him? So, Rick, hit that play button, buddy. This is an amazing one-of-a-kind car.
Every museum needs its special one-of-a-kind collection item, whether it's the Hope Diamond at the Smithsonian or the Mona Lisa at the Louvre. And for this museum, it's the Oldsmobile F88 concept car. There's only one in existence, and it's here. The F88 had a rocket V8 engine from the Oldsmobile division, had 250 horsepower. It was a light vehicle, and so it was everything that a sports car could be. It represents the aspirations of the mid-1950s. Harley Earl, who was the design genius for decades at General Motors, was enamored with aerospace and with jet engines. And so it's a very sleek car. You can almost imagine it on the highway today.
And viewers, I had the pleasure of being up close with that, and I got to be candid, Al. I stood by that turntable for at least 6 revolutions, just because every time, because it's such a massive change from a traditional car in that era, but everything's just flows, right?
It is, we were just talking about Chip Foose, and he's got this, phenomenal eye. When you look back to that era, there were a couple of car designers that were really revolutionizing, and one of those guys was Harley Earl.
Yes.
So he was with GM at the time, and that kind of fell on him and some other designers to come up with, hey, what's that next thing? So obviously very similar in looks and appearance to the Corvette.
Yes.
Same, the nervous points, I mentioned how nervous I was driving the Foose Mustang Grand Junction.
Yeah.
When it came time in the rotation to pull the F88 off that turntable,
right,
it was hard to get people to volunteer to help because no one wanted to be responsible if something had happened to it.
Good point.
But while that's going through, the work, unlike some of the cars, there's nowhere to get a replacement part. It is truly, one of one. There is nothing like any other car on that. So while that one's getting worked on, that's just very, very special, care and attention when you're going through that. But I think 3 were made initially, all for this to be displayed at the Motorama in 1954. When GM made the decision, we're gonna stick with the Corvette, and that's what we're gonna put the emphasis behind. That's what we're going forward with. Normally, you destroy those prototypes because we can't sell them to the public for legality reasons. So either they were given to an executive or destroyed. So I think one of those was given to an executive and then later destroyed. The other was destroyed right away. This one kept touring as a display until finally it was ordered destroyed, and that's when it got disassembled and boxed up. And I think Harley Earl sold it to E.L. Cord, and it sat in the boxes. And then I think the property that it was on traded hands a few times, and thankfully, whoever opened those boxes and saw what it was recognized it for what it was, and that's when the restoration began. incredible story, but it is
Incredible.
the only one.
Absolutely incredible. So I think we've got a little screen we'll pull up here on people can find out more about what goes on at Gateway, including the great museum. So we'll step through that, right? So the best way would just gatewaycanyons.com, right?
That's it.
Perfect. And so your basic contact number. Well, Al, we can't thank you enough for being on the show. And next time you talk to your uncle, if he's looking for like an old beat-up, white-haired, wannabe car show guy that looking for somebody to adopt, I'd like to talk to him. Nothing
Okay,
else.
I'll pass that on.
You do that. I'm sure it'll be high on his list. I'll get a response in probably like half an hour or not. But,
Maybe.
well, thank you again. You have a great weekend. I will let you know in advance because I guarantee I have to come back and check out that amazing collection again. You have a great weekend, sir.
Thank you. You as well. Look forward to it.
You betcha. So, ladies and gentlemen, you got to check out the Gateway Auto Museum. Their whole property's phenomenal. Great hotel. You can stay right there. It is truly a gift to go there. Obviously, I'm a big fan. Until next time, obviously do me a favor, hit us up on social media, like, subscribe, and share on our YouTube channel. Until we chat again, enjoy the ride.